Recently, I told you guys not to buy, and I have proof why this actually works when something's overpriced. It's already getting cheaper. We're going to be talking about both Nvidia as well as AMD. Of course, we know this happened with Intel years ago, but let me give you my first really good example. So this past Tuesday was the release of the new AM5, the Ryzen 7000. Typically, you would think this would be a big deal. I mean, when Ryzen 5000 came out, you had people lined up out of the door. This launch, however, was much different. I went on launch day, which I kind of regret, to be honest. You'll see why. And I picked up the 7950X. Of course, I have other reasons for it, content creation. I do stuff on it. I might do a review on it. So I have some good justifications. I was able to get rid of my 5950X as well, but it's actually cheaper already since the day that I got it. 3 days later, Micro Center, the store that I got it at, they started a promotion where they're going to give you a free kit of DDR5 RAM if you purchase any of the new Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 9 from the AM5 7000 series. In fact, I went back and they gave me the RAM. This is it right here. So kudos to them. That's pretty good customer service. But I just bought this on Tuesday. We're not talking about a sale, months or weeks after. Literally 3 days after I bought my expensive 7950X, they started a special on Friday that they're giving away a kit of RAM. And this may not be the most expensive RAM in the world, but it's pretty decent. It's 32 gigabytes. It's DDR5 5600. It's really not that bad at all. It will do if you're doing a build and you want to save some money. This will actually get you through, and I doubt you would really notice a difference between the higher, more expensive kits. So they know that nobody bought on launch day. From what I heard in my particular store, less than 10 people purchased the high-end CPUs, which is a pretty startling number when you consider the amount that they sold of Ryzen 5000. You couldn't get one of these CPUs in stock during the first few weeks, even few months. Definitely very hard to get. That shows you how far things have come. Why weren't people buying? Well, you're going to need this DDR5. When I bought it Tuesday, you would have had your own kit, which I had a separate one already. You're going to need a brand new motherboard. The motherboards are typically more expensive this generation than they were in the past. And of course, the CPU itself is pretty expensive. And while yes, it does perform great for gaming, if you have something from last generation, likely I think you're going to be pretty good already, so there's not that big of a reason really for an upgrade. The overall platform cost is just a little bit too high, and this is another little sneaky thing that they're not really going to tell you across the board with the new motherboards and the new products that you're getting. Some of the product stack has indeed shifted. If you're used to paying $500 for a high-end motherboard before, you can forget that. A $500 motherboard now is going to be significantly lower quality on average than you're used to getting in the past. It may even have the same name still, the same brand that you're used to, but don't compare it to what you had last generation. That's one of the ways that they're trying to sell you something that's not as good quality for a high price still. You can even reference some of Gamer's Nexus, when he did a review of Ryzen 5000, he also said that the motherboard quality in general has gone down, but the price certainly hasn't. So prices are getting much, much higher, and if you don't buy, this is what happens. A few days later, you get a significant discount. We're not talking about $20 off or $30 off. This is valued at $189, almost $200. Even if you don't want this particular kit, it's still pretty good, pretty new. You can sell it off to a friend or something like that, get some money back. Definitely has its value. That is significant on a product that just launched. That's why nobody bought it the first day. And then a few days later, when they started the special, you can see their stock numbers improving. Of course, a lot more people were buying then because they had an incentive. This makes it financially a little bit better to buy, and of course it kind of dilutes the value and the price of Ryzen 7000 to begin with. But what are you going to do? Nobody wanted to buy it. It's not a good time. There are many macroeconomic conditions as well, sort of resulting in these issues. Nobody's too excited about these expensive new platforms. Of course, Intel is going to be coming out soon as well, so this is definitely a pretty big issue. But it shows you if nobody buys, they have to give you a good price. Let's say if it was sold out, there's a chance it would have been even more expensive going forward. Maybe they wouldn't include certain things when you buy these CPUs. You already don't get a cooler because of course the CPUs do run fairly hot and you do need a high-end cooler, but that's yet again something else that you don't get for your money, and the processor prices either stay the same or tend to go up. So very interesting that they did this, but the story doesn't really stop with AMD, we have to talk about Nvidia as well. If you guys have noticed, the RTX 4000 series has started popping up in various retailers, including Newegg and Best Buy. So of course you can't buy it yet. It's just there to show you that it's coming. October 12th is going to be the date. So an interesting thing that we can glean from this, it's a similar story to the AMD processors. They know they're going to have a harder time now selling the 4090 than they did with the previous GPUs. Don't get me wrong, I think a lot more people will buy the 4090 compared to the Ryzen 7000 because GPUs are typically more exciting, and you will have that enthusiast base that are going to buy it no matter what. They're going to sell their, antiquated 3090 Ti's, if you can say that. I'm joking, of course, but they can sell their old GPUs and buy the new ones and still get decent resale value, even though they've gone down. If you bought a 3090 Ti this year, you're likely losing over half of the value. So perhaps not really the best idea there if you care about the value of the GPUs. But anyway, the 4090 likely will sell, but I don't think it's going to sell in the numbers that we're used to with the 3090 and last generation. You can see from these, listings that the pricing has stayed very close to the $1599 MSRP. Last generation, you would only see the 3090 Founders Edition at $1499. It was rare that another 3090 ever even got close to that price. In fact, here's a big example. The Asus Strix was at one point $2299. Some of the MSI 3090s were even more expensive. I remember seeing them for like $2600 or something crazy like that, which is a significant bump up from that MSRP. Now, most of the MSRPs are staying close to that number. The 4090 Strix is still an exception. It's at $1999, which is high compared to the original MSRP, but at least it's within a $300 limit, which at least is more reasonable than the $700 or $800 markup that the 3090 version had. So at least that's some improvement. But most of the other ones, even decent GPUs like the MSI Supreme, they're likely going to be around $1699, as we can see from the MSRP. Remember one thing though, they can still sell you something like a $1699 GPU that has, let's say, the Supreme. I don't know this particular GPU. This is just an example. It's always been high quality from like the other ones that I've had of the 3000 series, but something else they can do to keep the price low is maintain that name, but they could be giving you a lower quality GPU with a high-end name that we're used to. That's something you guys have to watch out for. I've seen that with some different motherboards. It's definitely something that they can do. If you're used to something, let's say like a Strix, and it's super high quality, they could still name the new one a Strix, but just make it pared down, make it a little bit, watered down, make it more like a Tough or something like that, while still maintaining that branding. That's a way that they could still sell you a GPU for more money, but still save costs on their end with the manufacturing and not have to be nearly as high end. I'm not saying that's happening here with the GPUs, but I definitely have seen it with the new AMD motherboards that came out. They certainly shifted the product stack. You can compare some of the X670 motherboards with their Z690 counterparts, and you'll see that in general, even against X570, some of the features are definitely less compared to the previous or the other generations for around the same price, and the build quality seems to be less as well amongst the same named models. So keep an eye on that for GPUs. I'll let you guys know if I notice that actually in person. We're not going to be able to see until we actually test the 4090, but that's another way that they can justify the cheaper price. Don't think the cheaper price is just because they're trying to keep everything reasonable so people buy. They could also be cutting corners. Maybe the boxes might be cheaper. There are a lot of ways that they can sort of cut these prices while still being really profitable for them. So that's something else to keep in mind. Generally, people aren't buying GPUs now, and they see that the market demand is significantly lower. Even for a new generation GPU, they may have some trouble selling them. Look what happened with Ryzen 7000. Brand new platform, nobody bought, they had to discount it. So if nobody buys the new RTX 4000, we could start to see some bundles and discounted prices that actually favor the consumer instead of being rip-off bundles and like we had last year where you had to buy really terrible things along with the GPU just to get the GPU. Things like with the Newegg Shuffle and different examples like that. If nobody buys, we get better deals like this RAM with the Ryzen 7000, which is actually decent, lowering the overall price regardless of what you're purchasing. So that's what we want to see. And that's only going to happen if not that many people are buying, unfortunately. That's just how the market works. They need to give incentives to people. And the same thing may happen with the GPUs, because the listed GPUs we see right now are not at rip-off prices compared to the MSRP. You can argue the 4090, 1599 is high to begin with, and it certainly is. And we're not even going to talk about the 4080 12 gigabyte. That's a terrible GPU. That should have been a 4070. I think you guys are well aware of that, but we're yet to see what the value proposition will be here. Definitely not in the 4090, perhaps in the future 4070. That's the only time you're going to get a good performance to, what you're paying for, like with the value. And for right now, it might be an older or used RTX 3000 that you can get fairly cheap. That may be your best value proposition compared to the new generation. But remember, if you don't buy, they're more likely to give us incentives, and that's the way the market really has to go, because it's been way too expensive, the last few years, and it definitely has not been very consumer friendly. All right, guys, so let me know if you bought something recently and it went down in price. What do you think of Ryzen 7000 going down so fast? Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.